I'm sure you've seen lots of videos on the release, but have you ever wondered what the role is of each of your arms? What does your trail arm and your lead arm do in that whole process? Well, in this video, we're going to break it down. We're going to focus on the lead arm, focus on the trail arm. I'm going to explain to you why I've got this tennis racket here and just why I've got a golf ball teed up at around about sort of chest height. It's all going to become really clear, and then we're going to put everything we've learned together and then actually hit some shots and go through what we need to do. So I'd love you to try and do this. Now, I appreciate you're not going to have a tennis racket to hand, you might, but you can use the sort of lead hand, and you've got obviously the back of it and the palm of it. But basically, we're going to use this as a really good visual. If I was to take my grip onto this sort of tennis racket and go into sort of golf posture here, and then just take those body angles and just stand up. And that's why I've got the golf ball teed up this way. So effectively we're replicating the golf swing, but we're just doing it from a stood up position rather than a tipped over position. And let's go first of all through the lead arm. If I was to say to you from here, let's just make what feels like a normal backswing. I know you stood up normally, but what would happen is you'd have some body turn and your lead arm would sort of work around here somewhere. Now, look at that tennis racket. Look at where the face of that tennis racket points. It points directly up towards the sky. That's not where it started, okay? It started this vertical position here. So it starts vertical, and then as I rotate my body, nothing really changes, it stays vertical, but then my lead arm rotates through 90 degrees, and the racket face points upwards. So if from here, I simply just rotate my body, and rotate my body, and rotate my body, and rotate my body, I'm not gonna be anywhere near where I want to be down at impact. That's so different to where it was. So what I have to do in the downswing with my lead arm is, yes, there's going to be some body turn, but I have to use my lead arm to make this movement. This is what we call supination of that lead arm. What that does, it takes this tennis racket from pointing up towards the sky and it rotates it back to this kind of, as you can see there, that vertical position. Now from that face on, I would like you to see more of the face of the tennis racket, okay, versus what you could see at the start. So here's your first little exercise. You're going to take your palm or tennis racket, vertical, hopefully you can't really see the sort of strings on that tennis racket. Backswing, body turn, present the face. Present the face. Now why do I want you to see more of the strings? Well, because if I tip over, that's putting shaft lean in. Okay, it's no good having the tennis racket vertical if you can't see the strings, because that down here would be a little bit of a flippy kind of release. So this little simple exercise of turn and fold and back to here is training me how to actually blend body turn and what my lead arm should be doing. Notice how when I do that, I've got a flat to arched wrist, which is really good, and I've got that tennis racket nice and vertical. Now there's a combination of body turn and forearm rotation there. Look what happens if I get too aggressive with my body. If my body works too much, it doesn't give my arm any time to do what it needs to do. So I'm very likely to have the club face way, way open. So if you're someone who feels like you struggle to square the face, you don't have that time, it's often because your body's going too aggressively, club arrives at ball, you haven't given your arm any time to do what it needs to do. Maybe you're someone who doesn't use the body at all. Well, in that case, if you don't use the body at all, a couple of things are going to happen. Either you're going to start to fold that arm far too soon, and you're going to start to close the face, or maybe you're going to be that person who starts to bend and flex the elbow and gets that kind of chicken wing position. So not turning the body enough, quite detrimental, going to cause issues. Turning the body too much or too aggressively, again, it's going to cause issues. So doing this drill, you can just start to get a nice blend of body turn and arm rotation. So now you've got something that's probably going to be a little bit more familiar to you, a golf club. And I've got a ball teed up and I've just got an alignment stick down here on the ground, so I'd love you to set this up. The first thing I'm going to be trying to do here is just focusing on where I can get the golf club to land relative to the ball, and that's why I've got this kind of alignment stick in the ball down here. So if you can imagine there's a line between that ball and the alignment stick, I want my golf club to land sort of target side, so sort of in here somewhere. So you know, anything just forward of the ball by 4, 5, 6 inches. So I'll just show you what that would look like, and then we'll go through exactly how you're going to do it. But it's going to look something like this. That was just in line with the ball. That was just after. You can see that little mark in the ground there that's being made just after the golf ball. So that's kind of what my goal is in this little exercise. But if we show you how this kind of really relates to that first little exercise, when I make my backswing with my lead arm only, look where that club face points. That club face points up towards the sky. That's kind of what we saw when we did that demonstration at the start with this tennis racket. Club face points up towards the sky. So if I keep my arm passive and simply just use my body and turn back, we're going to get the same thing that we saw in that first demonstration. Face is way open. So I've got to learn now how to do that movement that we spoke about at the start. Turn my body and then rotate my arm and twist the club. We can start to get this impact. Hands forward is why the club will land target side of the ball. If you can twist the forearm, you'll be able to get the club face pointing back at your target. So the goal here, and don't get me wrong, this is really hard to hit golf shots this way, but by doing this in practice and hitting the ball over 20 yards max, you're just going to start to get a really good understanding of what the lead arm is doing. So let's go ahead and see how I get on. My goal is to see if I can land the club target side of the ball and have the ball go, give or take, pretty straight. So we're going to go back, rehearse it a couple of times, and then see if we can actually get this to happen with a golf club. Okay, pretty good. I mean, that probably went 20 yards, but I did exactly what I needed to do. I kind of landed the club where I wanted to, and the ball went pretty straight. That's your first little exercise to take care of that lead arm. Hopefully now you've got some really good feels and ideas. Let's go on to this trail arm. Let's do the same thing. We're going to take a setup. You can see, holding in trail hand, tennis racket is vertical, you can't see the strings. As I make a backswing, my arm is going to fold, and guess what? That racket is going to rotate again, similar to what we said before. So what have I got to do on the downswing? Well, again, I've got to bring it back to this position where, as you can see from that camera angle, the racket is kind of vertical, but you can see the strings. So many golfers have these kind of movements here where you can almost see the back of the racket rather than the front of the racket. Now, when I make this movement, if I can lead with the inside of this elbow, so I lead with the inside of the elbow, then I use my forearm, I can get that delivery that we want. The key thing with this is when you focus on the racket and you focus on the arm, you get the body motion for free. That happens. Because if I don't move my body, I just physically can't do the right thing. I'm going to start to use my elbow, I'm going to start to use my wrist, I'm going to use all those movements that we see in so many golf swings that cause issues, and it's because the body's not working. So when I simply go from here, let it fold, work it back, I'm turning my body and I'm feeling like I have to do that in order to get the racket back to the right place. So I'm now learning what my trail arm is doing. Notice how there is some bend in it. Notice how the elbow has gone more into the middle of my body versus more to the trail side of my body. That really helps. And I've got that delivery position, which when we tip it down would be a perfect delivery. Now we're going to move on to actually hitting a couple of shots with each of those arms with a golf club. But before we do that, you can obviously do this together. There's my setup. That's just here from tipped up. I turn, the racket folds, and then I need to learn how to actually return it to this position. And then I'm blending both of those arms. So now we can move on to the same little exercise, but obviously other hand. Now, you can sort of cheat that first one. You can use just arm. When you're using the trail hand, you can't just use your arm. You have to get your body involved. So once we get this sort of halfway back position, if I keep the body static, I simply just cannot achieve any sort of kind of functional impact. So I cannot get my trail arm to do the right thing if my body doesn't move. As soon as my body starts to shift, rotate, look how much easier it is for me to get myself into this position. Same ideas. Can I get the club to land target side of the ball? And can I get the club face to point pretty much where I want the ball to go? These movements, you're going to see, you're going to feel that are wrong. These movements, these are all the movements that we see in the golf swing. Normally they're because that face is pointing up and the golfer's desperately trying to point it back at the target. But again, we can start off by just going little swings, land it target side, land it target side. Once you've done a couple of those, same thing, ball went straight, landed the club in the right place, even though I've only hit those balls 15 yards max. What I've done is I've learned how to release my arms through the downswing, how to squeeze the loft off the face, how to get shaft lean, and how to compress it. So what I then would do is pretty simply just progress to 2 hands on the golf club. Now, as I fold into the backswing, I can really start to, dial in what those forearms are doing and how they need to function to get myself into this impact. This is what we want. Put it all together.